Hello and welcome to Heilman Haver, the Stage and Screen podcast, coming to you from Casa de Quinn and 1111 Studios in beautiful Port Orchard, Washington. I'm Matt Haver.
And I'm Greg Heilman. We're two local actors looking to hone our craft by exploring the best in local theater and on the big screen. Each week we bring you entertainment news and views, celebrate classic Hollywood, enjoy cocktails with a Tinseltown twist, interview talented local actors and directors, and chat with industry experts from LA to the UK.
Today's September 10th. Welcome to episode 43. This week we're bringing you the second half of our interview with documentary filmmaker and Olympic College Bremerton digital filmmaking instructor Marq Evans. Marq's latest project, Clay Dream, debuted at the 2021 Tribeca Film Festival, and he'll join us in a few minutes to tell us about his journey as an entrepreneur, teacher, and award-winning filmmaker.
And if filmmaking is something you aspire to, then join us at the 2021 Seattle Film Summit. This premier event is a series of interactive educational panels and workshops focused on connecting our local industry to LA, New York, and the rest of the world. The summit is a hybrid event comprising classes, workshops, panels, film screenings, pitch sessions, award ceremonies, and networking opportunities.
And it's not too late to get tickets. There are events happening tonight, virtually Friday, September 10th, and live at the Hyatt Regency Lake Washington in Redmond tomorrow, Saturday the 11th. Visit seattlefilmsummit.com for more info and to purchase tickets, also linked in the show notes. And we'll be on site tomorrow bringing you special interviews and all the action from inside the summit, so stay tuned to our social media pages for all the latest.
It's going to be a busy weekend for Heilman and Haver, and it's a busy weekend for our local theaters as well. For all our local listeners, we're happy to announce that there are two shows opening in Kitsap County today, Friday, September 10th. At Western Washington Center for the Arts, it's the Gilbert and Sullivan favorite, The Pirates of Penzance, directed and choreographed by our friends Dan Estes and Rebecca Ewen. The show runs through October 3rd, and you can get your tickets at WWCA.us.
And there's more singing from the stage happening at Bremerton Community Theater, also opening tonight, Side by Side by Sondheim, a musical review of the early career of legendary lyricist and composer Stephen Sondheim. This Tony Award-winning musical is a perfect introduction to the work of a contemporary master and a must for diehard fans. The show runs through September 26, and you can get more info and tickets at bctshows.com.
Side by Sondheim director Rana Tan and musical director and accompanist Gwen Adams were kind enough to sit down with Matt and me for a preview of the show on our latest episode of In the Mix. Find it on our YouTube channel and also posted on Facebook. This week's cocktail is the Sondheim Sour, guaranteed to quench your thirst and wet your whistle for plenty of singing along to your Broadway favorites.
And speaking of favorites, favorite Christmas movies that is, join us next week, Friday, September 17th, when we'll be celebrating our one-year anniversary as a show with a very special interview with actress Carolyn Grimes. At age 6, Carolyn played the role of Zuzu Bailey in the 1946 Frank Capra classic It's a Wonderful Life. Her childhood film career spanned 16 movies, but she's best remembered for her touching scenes with the brilliant James Stewart as her father, George Bailey.
Fall may be just around the corner, but it's never too early for It's a Wonderful Life, and we're excited for part of our interview with Carolyn to play this Christmas at the historic Roxy Theater's holiday event featuring our friend Jeremy Arnold from TCM. Details to come, so stay up to date on our Facebook and Twitter, and tune in next week for a preview as we interview Zuzu herself, Carolyn Grimes.
And now we're pleased to bring you the second half of our interview with documentary filmmaker, entrepreneur, and educator Marq Evans. Marq's most recent documentary, Clay Dream, premiered at the 2021 Tribeca Film Festival to critical acclaim. His debut feature film, The Glamour and the Squalor, won top prize at film festivals around the world before being acquired by Red Bull Media House. He's represented by XYZ Talent Management, and in addition to film, Marq has produced commercials for clients including the Smithsonian Institute, U.S. Navy, the Government of Haiti, and Clinton Global Initiative.
With his wife Angela and son Jude, Marq leads The Macaw, a boutique creative studio creating film, books, photography, and other unclassifiable work such as the Cow by Bear Dinner Party Experience. Marq holds an MFA from Vermont College of Fine Arts and a bachelor's degree in business administration from Washington State University. He lives and works in Bremerton, Washington, where he teaches digital filmmaking at Olympic College. Your most recent project, which you mentioned before, Clay Dream, celebrates the career of Will Vinton, an Oscar and Emmy-winning clay animator who's known as the father of claymation. And I think, Matt and I grew up a few years apart, but still we've had experience with California Raisins and the Christmas, claymation things, plenty of claymation throughout the years. So has this been something that's been percolating with you for a while? Back, maybe since the 80s or something like that?
No, I definitely was into that work. I loved the California Raisins. I remember Lenoid. We watched Claymation Christmas Celebration when I was growing up. But I wasn't thinking, even early, even when I was doing the Haiti project or certainly starting The Glamour and the Squalor, I wasn't thinking, someday I want to do this Will Vinton film. That came around as I was wrapping up The Glamour and the Squalor, again, looking for new projects. I read an article called How the Father of Claymation Lost His Company to a Rapper Named Chili T, which, when the movie comes out, when people see the movie, they'll understand what that means and Will's kind of rise and fall and what happens to his company. And there is a rapper named Chili T that is involved in that story. And so when I read that, it really felt like, and it was so well written and so well researched, and the article was really well structured, like a documentary. I was like, this reads like a film. And then having the nostalgia there, whereas the glamour and the squalor was this radio DJ that helped break all the bands that I listened to as a kid. This is a story about a guy that, created a lot of characters that I really loved as a kid. So there was that nostalgia factor, but really just had this great built-in story. There's a lot of surprising conflict and drama in the story. And it was, we kind of, when we were pitching it originally, as kind of like the Mr. Rogers documentary, Won't You Be My Neighbor?
Mm-hmm.
With Social Network, the David Fincher movie about Facebook. Like that's how we were pitching this thing. So yeah, so reading that, it was the first time I thought, oh, this could be a great movie. And it was pretty similar with Will and with Marco as far as the process of getting them on board. I got excited about that story. I think I found an email address for Will. I think I reached out that day that I read it because I was just excited. And his wife, who I think it said it was his assistant, wrote back saying, yeah, he'll meet with you, but he's not really interested in doing a documentary. And I thought, oh, okay, he'll meet with me. So we had a trip planned in the Northwest because we were still living in San Diego at the time, and met with him in Portland, had like a 3-hour meeting at Starbucks, and I thought we totally hit it off. And I was like, oh, cool, I think this is going to happen. And then I followed up with him like a week later, and he's just like, yeah, I'm not really interested in doing a documentary, but we can keep talking, So I was like, all right, guess we'll keep talking. He's a cool guy, I like him. And
foot in the door.
Yeah. And so we just kept talking for, 6 months, every few weeks or whatever. And ultimately he came around to the idea, and that was that.
Do you think a lot of it comes down to trust? You've got to just kind of take that time. If there's any kind of controversy, especially, they've just got to, they got to know that you're as serious as they see this time in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that just takes a little while. And then with Will, there was also this trust factor that continued as we were making it, because he was really hesitant to make I think he was hesitant to make the film that I ended up making. But as the years went on, he felt more comfortable allowing me to make that film. And what he gave me access to, so Chili T, the rapper, is the son of Phil Knight, the Nike founder.
Right.
And this plays a big part in the movie, is Will and Phil Knight butting heads over Will Vinton Studios. And there's this great deposition footage that I kind of use throughout the film as the through line. And I didn't even know about this footage until at least 2 years into making the film. And I was over at Will's, and he just casually was like, hey, did I give you the deposition? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, is there like transcripts of it? And he's like, oh no, we shot it. I hired a crew to shoot the and so I was like, oh no. And so he gave me this box of beta tapes, and I remember, I had to get it digitized at the lab. When I got it, I was like, oh, we really have something now. Because I knew that I was going to tell that side of the story, but I didn't know how. But when we started, 2 years previously, he knew I was going to tell that side of the story, but he was just like, he didn't want the movie to be about that. And it's not. I mean, it's a big part of it, but it's not about that. And I think he was just, he was hesitant for a lot of things that maybe would get too personal. And we ended up, going through a lot of these things. So it just took a little while. And then I think he just realized, like, if anybody's going to see the movie, and, he wants the legacy of the work and the people that made the work to be celebrated. But if we don't make the best movie with the best story possible, nobody's going to see it. And then what's the point anyway? So I think, and he realizes that. I mean, I think he saw the choices that I was making and realized that if he wasn't the subject, if he wasn't so close, he would have been making those same choices as a director. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it took probably 2 years. I mean, I think we became friendly pretty quickly, but it took at least 2 years before he was fully comfortable giving me everything that he had.
Wow. Well, people are certainly seeing it. It was debuted at the Tribeca Film Festival, and something I thought was pretty cool is that we're coming up on obviously the 20th anniversary of September 11th, and this was a film festival founded by Robert De Niro, as most people know, Jane Rosenthal and Craig Hatkoff, in 2002, specifically to spur the economic recovery of Lower Manhattan after 9/11. So What did it mean to you to have your film screened at such an auspicious festival on such a big year?
Yeah, I mean, it was super cool. It was the 20th anniversary of the festival, so they were celebrating that. And I mean, Tribeca was the festival that I really wanted to premiere the film at.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to premiere The Glamour and the Squalor there, and it didn't get in. And films don't get into festivals or do get into festivals for all kinds of different reasons. Like, you learn the festival game is there's so many factors that go into it that it's pretty crazy. But I was hoping that we could premiere the film there. So, and we had to kind of wait for months. Like, there was a senior programmer that I knew she used to be at a different festival and loved The Glamour and the Squalor, was a huge champion of it, programmed it at two other festivals that she used to work for. So then she ended up being a programmer at Tribeca. So I sent her the film, and immediately she watched it within a week and was like, "Oh my God, I love it. There's other programmers too, but it's looking very good." And then, like, she kept saying that, but then there were some issues. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but because of the Phil Knight thing, that it's not always just like, "Oh, we love the film, let's program it because we like it." There's other factors at play. And so kind of had to wait for a little while, but so that maybe made it a little bit more sweeter though. And we finally did get that, that acceptance. And it was also a relief of like, okay, cool. Because once you have a premiere date, then everything starts. Then it's like, okay, we're going to premiere at this major festival. We'll get some press out of that premiere. We hired a PR company. So we got reviewed and everything. And then we can take that story of the fact that it's premiering at a festival that is highly curated, and we have these reviews, then we can sell that story with our sales agent to the distributors. So we know that, like, once you have a festival, and especially, you don't have to have a major festival, but it certainly helps to have that as your premiere. So like I said, it was really exciting, and then also just kind of a relief for a lot of reasons as well.
When are you going to be able to see Clay Dream? You said within the next few weeks?
Probably not the next few weeks, other than at a festival that might be virtual, which that's been the interesting thing this year with festivals is, they're all back. Some of them, like Tribeca, went to like a hybrid where it was part in person, part virtual. But the cool thing about the virtual component is, it used to be, let's say Tribeca, you had to be in New York to watch the films, to buy a pass to go to Tribeca. But this year, anybody in the country could have bought a pass to watch all the films at Tribeca. So that kind of, for the festival, it opens them up to a larger audience. And then also just for your film where people can see it. So for instance, I know the Port Townsend Film Festival, which is next month. It's a really good local festival. It's been around for a while now. They're playing it, and they're doing it virtually. So I imagine that'll probably be available. I don't know if it's the whole country, but I think it might be. So people can watch it as it's part of some of these festivals that are virtual. But we're still buttoning up the distribution plans. So there's a couple of distributors that we're still in talks with. So at some point over the next couple of weeks, we'll be making a decision on that. And then it's kind of up to them and us as far as like when it will actually come out. So I would imagine sometime this year, but we might do, there might be a limited theatrical run in some major cities. And, that usually comes first, and then it'll go to rent or buy. And then it'll go to streaming, and then, like DVD, Blu-ray being the last thing. So, I would say to people listening that want to see it, keep your, eyes peeled for a virtual festival where you might be able to buy a pass or buy a ticket to the show. And then hopefully in the next couple months, sometimes it'll be more widely available.
Yeah, you said Port Townsend Film Festival, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, we'll look that up and link it in the show notes, because that'll be a great opportunity for us to see it too.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's in the next couple weeks, you said, opening?
It's in September. Yeah, I don't know the actual date. I think it's a little bit mid to later September.
Perfect. We'll look that up.
So you mentioned with distribution, and there's so many outlets right now, and Matt and I have been kind of following the streaming versus theater thing since COVID started, and how that's going to look after that. And you mentioned distributors. How much are you involved with, that whole distribution process, and or do you hand that off to a distributor who does all the negotiations as far as how many times it has to be seen? I mean, all those little things that you deal with. Do you keep your fingers in that, or is that?
I mean, I'm involved with it, but and so for The Glamour and the Squalor, I did work with a sales rep. So that's kind of like you have a sales rep that sells the film to a distributor, and so they negotiate, they work all the deals and everything. So I had one for The Glamour and the Squalor. Our biggest deal for that one was actually the Red Bull Media House, which, Red Bull, the energy drink, they've got their own production distribution side too. So we programmed it there, and then it was still on iTunes and Amazon to rent and buy and all that first, and then Red Bull took it for a lot of territories internationally. So that was an interesting one, because that came, even though we shopped it around, they reached out to me. That movie premiered at SIFF, Seattle International Film Festival, and they saw it there. Somebody did, and they reached out to me, and that ended up being the deal that we negotiated. And they made an initial offer. I think we ended up getting probably double the money that they first offered. So our sales rep was instrumental in getting more money out of them. But we talked to a lot of people, but that was just that doesn't happen a lot, where who you end up going with is just kind of hits you up out of the blue. And I don't even know if they would have been on our list, because they were brand new at the time. We didn't know that they were acquiring films. So, and then for Clay Dream, XYZ Films is a great indie film company out of LA. They had a kind of a hit a couple years ago with the film called Mandy with Nick Cage that did really well. And they started as kind of more like the horror genre type thing, but have really expanded beyond that and are a great kind of an art house company. They got into documentary just a couple years ago. Tamir Ardone, who's my producer, he kind of his passion project was a film called Framing John DeLorean, about John DeLorean, the car maker. And it's a hybrid documentary that stars Alec Baldwin playing John DeLorean. But it's more of a documentary. What's kind of cool is Alec Baldwin is learning in the film. You see him kind of learning about how to play John DeLorean. And that's kind of how some of the information. So there's some reenacted scenes and there's documentary, interviews and archive footage and all that. So they put that film out a couple of years ago, and Tamir's been really ramping up their the XYZ slate for documentaries. So they came on board about 2 years ago, probably on Clay Dream, and they've been great partners. And they're also a sales agency as well too. So they're a production company, and they are also one of the probably top 5 sales agencies. Submarine is probably the most widely known sales agency. But anyway, so you work with the sales agency, and then they go shop it. They do all those. So I'm not involved in the day-to-day of that, but they'll just bring me kind of, once every, week or two, they'll kind of update me with what's going on.
Well, this has been quite an education on the filmmaking side of things. And the other side of your life, along with entrepreneur, filmmaker, documentarian, is as an educator. Mm-hmm. You grew up in the Tri-Cities, like you said, moved to San Diego with your wife in 2010, back to Bremerton, 2019. What drew you to the area? And how did you find your way to Olympic College, which is where we found you, through Tim Hagen? Yeah. He said, you got to get this guy on.
So my wife's family has a place out on Hood Canal, kind of in between Belfair and Union. They've had it since the 50s, the property. So, and I met my wife first day, freshman year of college, 1999. So I've been going out there for a long time. We've been going out there for a long time together, and living in San Diego every year, usually twice a year, we would drive, we would make the big road trip and go to the canal house, go to the Hood Canal House for a couple weeks. And it was 2018. 2016, 17, 18, it was just getting harder and harder to leave every time. I mean, we've got both of us, most of our family is in this area and a lot of friends in this area. And we just really wanted to get back here, back to Washington State, probably Western Washington. And my wife's from Olympia. Bremerton, that we didn't know anything about. We had one family of friends here, who's Chris, my next door neighbor I was talking about, that writes for the Wall Street Journal, Chris and Betsy. But we didn't know much about Bremerton, except we knew them. And I texted Chris, a couple of years ago, and I'm like, hey, what's the deal with Bremerton? It's obviously very cheap. cost of living is very enticing. Because I had this epiphany in San Diego. I was like, I know how to make way more money. I know how we can overnight make way more money. We can spend a lot less by living in a way cheaper place.
Yep.
And and we were, again, already kind of missing Washington, but it's like Seattle, going to Seattle, it's like, well, that's not really going to put us in any better position than San Diego. And, my wife is a photographer, we're both in the arts, and, and we make our own projects. It's, we love to do it, but it's hard out there. So we wanted to find somewhere where the cost of living was a lot cheaper. And Bremerton's been interesting. There's, I feel like it's one step forward, 2 steps back and stuff as far as the development, but there are definitely things happening, and it's evident by the property values that have gone up in the past 2 years, which we got in at a good time for sure. But yeah, we knew Bremerton is the place where, when we were at the Hood Canal House, we would go get on the ferry to go to Seattle. And we just kind of thought about okay, we can buy a nice house that, is 3 times less than a starter home in San Diego. I mean, it was depressing looking at the places in San Diego that were way outside of our budget that we couldn't afford, and they were crap, you know. So we've been super happy. We've been really happy here, and part of the whole plan of coming to Bremerton was I found out that Olympic College had a film program, and my brother had just started at VCFA, and we were kind of talking about the teaching side of things. And that's kind of what sealed it for me. I was like, oh, and so I didn't have a job there or anything. I didn't have the master's yet, but I reached out to Tim before I even probably started the program, and just kind of introduced myself as somebody that, here's what I'm doing. We're planning on moving to Bremerton. I'm going to get my master's, and kept in touch with Tim, and, he's great. And we hit it off right away, and it just kind of worked out. Like, so as soon as actually, I think I ended up starting before I had the official degree, because the VCFA shared that I was on track, that I would be graduating like 6 months from now. So they were able to get that through, and, so they were hiring at the right time. And it's been great. I mean, I love to teach. One of the things outside of the school that I want to do too is have projects that maybe I'm not the director, but I can like get going for up and coming directors that want to do it. So I just really get excited about, helping others and teaching. So it's been a good fit, and being able to have that employment as well too while I work on my projects, it's kind of the perfect setup.
Yeah, we know it. Matt and I know firsthand the Bremerton arts community is definitely headed in the right direction with the revitalization of the downtown, the work we've been involved with the historic Roxy Theater and Quincy Square that's coming up. So it is definitely a place to be, and it's only going to get better. And plus, and maybe you can speak to this. We talked to Tim a little bit about this, the advent of and popularization of digital, filmmaking. You can do things. You don't have to be in California to make a film. You don't have to be in New York. You can be all these places and still have access to good equipment. And it must make that a lot easier as a filmmaker to be somewhere where maybe it's not, like LA, where the price of living is.
Yeah, you can be anywhere. I mean, if you're in LA or New York, you're definitely going to have more access to talented crew and professionals and all that. But I went from San Diego to Bremerton, and in San Diego, at least, I could take the train up to LA. But, and especially with COVID, with everybody getting so used to Zoom, you can have your meetings, you can be, working with production companies or agents or whatever in LA, and it's very, very easy. But then you've got colleges like Olympic College with the digital filmmaking program that is producing talent here. So you can definitely work with people, and I'll be working with people, students that graduate. I would be happy to work with people. I take on interns that are still part of the program. Part of one of their requirements is to have an internship. So every quarter I'll have an intern, and that's been great. That's been super helpful for me to have somebody that can be like an assistant editor or whatever it may be. And then the other great thing about the digital filmmaking program is it might not even be for somebody that necessarily wants to make films and have a career in filmmaking. They can get that degree and go work any job that's out there. That's going to be a huge asset that they know how to shoot video, edit video. Every company is putting out video, whether it's on social media or for their own website or what it is. So it's just a skill that really everybody should have. And if you're talented with that, there's going to be a lot of opportunities, whether or not you want to like make films, which some people do that are in the program, but you don't have to be like, oh, I want to be a filmmaker. And you certainly don't have to move, once you have that degree, you don't have to move to LA or New York. I mean, even Seattle, if you can go to Seattle and there's a great scene there, or you could stay right here in Bremerton like I do, and you can make it work as well too.
Well, you've covered some of the unique things about the OC film program. What other advice do you have for our listeners, young and old? Like myself, I fully intend to take some directing classes in the next couple of quarters. What advice do you have for people who are interested in maybe pursuing filmmaking, specifically documentary? Are there any challenges specific to documentary that you share with your students?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many.
But maybe a difference between documentary and say, like you said, like a standard feature type film. Maybe it's the access you talked about earlier.
Well, yeah, the access. And I think, one big difference is when you're making a narrative film, let's say everything comes together and you've got the financing and you've got everything in place, you're going to have a shooting schedule that's, 15 to 50 days or whatever it is. Right. And okay, we're going to shoot these days. We've got all these it's a lot more, you can do a lot more planning of how things are going to be. Whereas in documentary, you're relying on, if you're doing something that is interview based, you're going to be relying on a lot of different schedules. You're going to not know what those locations are going to be. I do prefer to shoot my interviews at the subject's location, which doesn't always turn out great. Sometimes you get there and you're like, oh God, I don't really know where we're going to shoot this and make it look really good. Usually we find a way, but that can be a challenge. So you've just got to be way more flexible in documentary because the schedules are, as much as you try to have a set schedule, it just is always changing. Now, I do like to try to schedule, like if I'm going to do B-roll and reenactments, I do try to schedule that like a narrative film where it's like, okay, let's try to do this within these 2 weeks right here. So there are things you can do, but the advice though, I think that is just to get started. It's just to start, not overthink it. If I would have not got started, I probably would have overthought it and be like, oh, it's just too daunting and maybe not have gotten into it. But I was naive enough to just kind of jump right in. But I still have to remind myself of that sometimes. Like on Clay Dream, I got started. I was doing a lot of interviews, but I remember one day I had this epiphany. I was like, I'd probably been working on it for like a year and had big interviews with Will and some other people, but then I wasn't doing anything with it. And I just like, well, what am I doing here? Like, I'm not really trying to raise money. Like I'm not talking to investors. Like I'm just kind of one day I'm going to make this movie, but I'm like, well, what am I doing though? And so even though I kind of had told myself that I probably wasn't going to do another Kickstarter after doing one for The Glamour and the Squalor, I just realized it's like, well, why? Okay, if I want to make this movie and I don't really know at the time how to go after investors or what investors would be interested in this, then what excuse do I have to not take advantage of this platform that's out there with Kickstarter in that case? So we raised $37,000 on Kickstarter, and that kind of allowed me. I hired an assistant editor, and we really started working with the material. And but again, like that, it was just kind of one day I was like, I just had that realization of like, yeah, I did the interviews, but I'm just kind of going through the motions. Like I'm not actually doing anything with this, and there's not going to be a movie that's just kind of made out of thin air unless I'm the one doing it. So yeah, I guess the advice would be just to stop waiting, stop procrastinating and just do it.
What a great way to start. Dip your toe in the water. And by taking a few classes at OC, I know as an alumni, I would have killed for there to have been a filmmaking program back. Oh boy, I won't tell you how long ago I was there.
Well, and a lot of the classes are available too. You don't have to be trying to get your bachelor's in digital filmmaking, which there is a digital filmmaking bachelor's degree. But one of the classes I'll be teaching this fall is Digital Filmmaking 1. And that'll be some people that are going to be getting into the program and want to get their 4-year degree. But it'll also be a lot of students, just like an elective, that just want to learn a little bit more about how to use the cameras and how to edit. I'll teach we'll make a short film. Every student will make a short film in that class. So they'll shoot, they'll edit, they'll figure out how to do all that. And then also, I believe there's emails going back and forth today to figure out like, is this starting in the fall? I think it's going to a documentary certificate. So for the first time, we're going to be offering documentary specific program as well too, that I'll be teaching those classes. So in the fall, it'll be just documentary 1, which is development and pre-production. So let's come up with an idea for a project. Let's develop it. Let's do all the necessary pre-production to get you set up. And then the next quarter, the students will be able to take that project into production. And then the next quarter, it will be post-production and distribution. So over the course of 3 quarters, they'll have a film and they'll have a certificate in documentary filmmaking. And I'll say too, that's one of the other great things about Olympic College is that it is very hands-on. It's not, there's some, lecturing for sure, but it's mostly just very hands-on. You're working on projects, you're working with the equipment. And that's not true with a lot of the film schools that are out there. That it's a lot of, learning about films from the 1950s.
Theory. Yeah. No, that's great. So excited for that program, and watch for one or both of us in some of your upcoming classes, I'm sure.
Well, Marq, this has been an education, like Matt said. But before we let you go, how can we and your listeners learn more about and keep up to date with what's going on in the filmmaking world of Marq Evans?
God, I wish I was better at social media. I think the only place I have an account is Twitter, which I don't often tweet out. When if there's big news with Clay Dream, for instance, I'll put something out on there, but I'm not super active. But I think that's at Marq_Evans, I believe. You might have to double check.
We'll dig it up and link it.
And I wish I was better at it. My wife runs an Instagram for the Macaw, and again, it's small, so that's our family business that is a production company on Clay Dream, and will continue to be a production company on these future projects. and then we put out the two, but kind of we decided like, let's do all of our creative projects under this one umbrella. But the macaw.studio is our website, which we try to put stuff on there as it's happening, but it's just, I don't know. I think we get caught up in just like doing the projects, and I'm not saying that this is like a good thing. It's probably like we could probably reach a lot more people if we were more active on social media, but neither one of us really like it, and actually kind of have a dislike to it.
It's a necessary evil.
Yeah.
And could be a full-time job. Well, you guys got a lot of stuff going on over at the Macaw, which is the macaw.studio. Something that we're going to have to check out ourselves, I was telling Greg, is one of your books you guys have out, Booze by Bear.
Yeah.
25 cocktails for seasonal living. So we'll have to get our hands on a copy of that and then get you on one of our In the Mix segments.
Let's do it. Yeah. I was going to say that one of my favorite cocktails in there is, I thought it was called Pernod. Are you guys familiar with the aperitif, the French aperitif? It's spelled Pernod, but when we were in France, so we went to France, to Annecy we had the international premiere of Clay Dream there, and I ordered one and they called it Pernod. So I don't know like how we pronounce it here, but Greg, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. And I was calling it Pernod as well, I think. So
it was actually, we were in Paris and I ordered it as a Pernod, and he didn't like, look at me weird or anything. He was just like, Pernod? I was like, oh yeah.
But we had a similar discussion when we were doing the Vesper Martini, whether it's Lillet Blanc or Lillet. It turns out it's Lillet,
That's
but you look at it, you think
Lillet.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
So we're just going to have you on. We'll make that cocktail, and then we'll talk a little bit about the correct pronunciation for a lot of these well-known cocktails. We've been we're just butchering all this time as Americans.
You'd fill up a couple of hours with that, I'm sure.
There you go. Well, until then, Marq, best of luck with your teaching. Best of luck with your projects. We're excited to see Clay Dream hopefully soon, and keep us updated on everything, and appreciate your time. We know you're a busy guy.
Happy to do it, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Thank you again to our guest, Marq Evans. You can find out more about Marq and his family's other creative works at www.themacaw.studio. And check out the Port Townsend Film Festival for a chance to see Marq's latest documentary, Clay Dream, at ptfilmfest.com. Join us next week, Friday, September 17th, as we celebrate our one-year anniversary with a very special interview with actress Carolyn Grimes, who played Zuzu Bailey in the 1946 Frank Capra classic, It's a Wonderful Life.
And if you enjoy the show, please make sure to follow us and share the podcast with a friend or two. Tell them to visit heilmanandhaver.com and tune in on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon Audible, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. You can drop us a message on Facebook and Twitter, and check out photos of all of Greg's delicious cocktails and all the fun we're having on Instagram. As always, thank you wherever you are for supporting your local theater and for joining us here on Heilman and Haver.